Question 1 of our ABE quick write practice says, why did the sergeant major toss the paw into the fire? So remember, this happened towards the beginning of the story after Sergeant Major Morris tells the whites about how he came into possession of the paw. He ends up throwing it in the fire, and then as we know, Mr. White did take the paw out of the fire and use it, as we read about in the story. I have asked you for this assignment today to do the first part of an ABE written response. So this is review. We've practiced this before this year. We are just reviewing a little bit, and just keep in mind that if this were a full-blown ABE written response, the expectation would be that you would have 2 E1s and 2 E2s. But for this assignment, we're just doing the answer and the because, and then 1 E1 and 1 E2. So for this question, like I always like to do when I am restating a question, is I like to look for the question word. Remember, question words are who, what, when, where, why, or how. And in this question, the question word is the word why. So when I go to restate this question, I know I am not going to include that word as part of my answer. Instead, what I'm going to do is take what's left after the word why and see if I can arrange it into a statement. So to do that for this question, I would say, Sergeant Major Morris tossed the paw into the fire because. So on your answer, that's how yours should begin. Sergeant Major Morris tossed the paw into the fire because, and this also covers the because that we're supposed to include when we do an ABE writing strategy. So Sergeant Major Morris tossed the paw into the fire because he was afraid of it and he didn't want anyone else to use it. You should have been looking around the 3rd page to find your answer to this question. Again, this was right after Sergeant Major Morris tells the whites how he himself got the paw, which we're going to talk more about that in just a second. He talks about how he thought about selling it, but decided against it and thinks that the best course of action is for it to be destroyed. So Sergeant Major Morris tossed the paw into the fire because he was afraid of it and he didn't want anyone else to use it. Then you're going to get into your E1. Remember, E1 stands for evidence. So this is where you would go back to the text and find text evidence to prove that your answer is right. So for this one, I went to the 3rd page of the passage and I found the section of the text where he actually tossed it into the fire. I have given you your sentence starter for this one. The text says, remember, you're going to add your own quotation marks, and when you are writing an E1, your evidence should be cited word for word from the text. This is not the place to get lazy and put the information in your own words. The E1 should be directly from the text. So again, I cited the part where he actually threw the paw into the fire. So I put, he took the paw and dangling it between his forefinger and thumb, suddenly threw it upon the fire. Then we're going to get into our E2. Our E2 is our explanation. Remember, they should be at least 2 sentences each. I have given you 1 sentence starter. So I said this evidence shows. And for the first sentence of my E2, I always like to just sort of reiterate what I said for my answer. So this evidence shows Morris's fear of the paw. Now I'm going to get a little more detailed and explain how I know that he is afraid of the paw. So here's what I put. He tossed it on the fire right after telling the whites that he himself got the paw because the previous owner wished for death. So that was something that I pulled from the passage. And if you ask me, that would probably be a reason to be afraid of it if you know you got it because the person before you wished to die. But we do need to add a little bit more here. And one trick that I've taught you guys earlier this year is using an if-then statement. I really like if-then statements when I am writing my E2s because they help me elaborate or go into more detail about my idea. So I said if he wanted to destroy the paw, and we know he did because he's throwing it in the fire, then it is clear that he is afraid of its power. So he wants to destroy it because he knows it's bad and he's afraid of what might happen if he doesn't destroy it. Your answer does not necessarily have to be word for word exactly the same as mine. What I really want you to focus on is making sure that you have a because as part of your answer and that you've restated correctly, that you have correctly cited evidence from the text, and that when you get to your E2, you have at least 2 sentences. So once your answer meets those criteria, you can move on to the next question.